The topic for next session is acute cholecystitis, and to chair this session, I would like to invite Dr. Patta Radhakrishnan from Chennai. He is the consultant and senior consultant, worked in surgical gastroenterology with esteemed Professor Emeritus Dr. Samiranandi at AIIMS, and currently he is working as a director and senior consultant at SIMS Chennai. I would like to invite our other chairperson, Dr. Shyam Sundar Sharma sir, who is a esteemed gastroenterologist of Rajasthan, currently working as a senior professor at SMS Medical College, Jaipur. Welcome, sir.
Good evening and welcome to this session. Acute cholecystitis was a relative contraindication for lap surgery not very long ago, but not anymore. The concept of conservative management of acute cholecystitis and interval cholecystectomy doesn't hold water anymore. Having said that, acute cholecystitis is not that easy to operate. As the time progresses from the onset, the surgery becomes very difficult. And to deal with this difficulty, I invite Dr. Muhammad Ibrarullah to the stage and talk about how he deals with acute cholecystitis. Dr. Ibrarullah, after his initial surgical training, he had his specialized training in surgical gastroenterology, Sanjay Gandhi Institute of Medical Sciences. And from then on, he headed a couple of other departments in South, which includes Venkateshwara Institute of Medical Sciences, Tirupati, where he excelled in ERCP, and he published a book from there on endoscopy. Then he had his stint in Ramchandra Medical College. That presently is the head of the department of GI surgery at Apollo Hospital, Bhubaneswar. And you've seen that book, the latest book, I think is specialized in atlases, and the latest atlas on gallbladder surgery with that you see in the morning. Welcome, Dr. Ibrar, and over to you.
Yes, good afternoon.
I'm sorry to interrupt, just half a minute. Actually, Dr. Fingerhead could not connect because of some technical reasons, but I can see his name now. Thank you very much, Dr. Fingerhead. We are sorry that we could not hear you due to the technical glitch, but thank you for your presentation. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Radha, for your kind introduction. Thank you, Dr. Kapoor and Jaipur team, for the invitation as well as the great hospitality that we are enjoying since this morning. So, sorry. Since this is a CME on cholecystectomy, I would like to confine my talk to the surgical aspects of acute cholecystitis rather than talking, this disease in general. So the very fact that in 2004 in USA, about 30% of patients with acute cholecystitis underwent laparoscopic cholecystectomy for acute cholecystitis. And in UK, same time around, the things are not different, that around 20% of the surgeons were willing to take up laparoscopic surgery for acute cholecystitis. That spoke about the hesitance in the mind of surgeon. Sorry, you shouldn't be moving on. Yeah. That spoke about the mindset of the surgeons or the initial hesitancy in doing laparoscopic surgery for this particular entity. But then next 10 years has seen a paradigm shift in the attitude of the surgeons. So that present the scenario is about 90% of the surgeons are now willing to take up cases or operate on acute cholecystitis by laparoscopic means. And the current scenario, beyond any doubt or debate, is early laparoscopic cholecystectomy is the standard of care for acute cholecystitis. I'm sure any surgeon worth his salt should be able to diagnose acute cholecystitis, but then there is a very standard and objective guidelines provided by Japan Surgical Society known as Tokyo Guidelines 2012, where the diagnosis was mainly based on local signs of inflammation, systemic signs of inflammation, and imaging findings. So in order to suspect diagnosis, you have to have at least one feature from A and B, and this gets confirmed on imaging findings. So one of A and B plus C would give you a definite diagnosis of acute cholecystitis. Ultrasound is a very good imaging technique to diagnose. I'm sure all of us use it. But then there are times where you have to fall back on special techniques or special imaging modalities like CT scan or MRCP. As you can see here, this is a CT scan that shows a necrotic gallbladder, this necrotic wall, and there is an intrahepatic abscess. All this is suggestive of a gangrenous cholecystitis. Similarly, here you can see a gallbladder with a rupture here, breach in the wall of the gallbladder and a pericholecystic abscess there. So obviously, you're dealing with a very a complicated cases of acute cholecystitis. This is here, you can see this air pockets inside the gallbladder as well as in the wall, suggestive of emphysematous cholecystitis, very serious problem. Similarly, here you can see a large pericholecystic abscess with a gallbladder inside. So again, suggestive of a necrotic, of a gangrenous cholecystitis or a perforated cholecystitis, perforated gallbladder. Management of acute cholecystitis depends on the severity of the disease. And this severity assessment, again, there is a Tokyo guideline for it, where they divide it or they classify this into grade 1 or grade 2 or grade 3 disease. Grade 1 is mild, nothing much there. And grade 2 moderate, with these are the features of moderate cholecystitis as outlined here. And when you have associated organ dysfunction, that makes it a severe acute cholecystitis or a grade 3 cholecystitis. So management, again, on the basis of this grading. For grade 1, the treatment is early laparoscopic cholecystectomy. For grade 2, it's early laparoscopic cholecystectomy in fit patient. However, when there are comorbidities, then the treatment is conservative treatment with elective surgery, and the patient responds, then he goes for elective surgery at a later date, say about 4 to 6 weeks later. And there is no response to treatments, means you have to resort to percutaneous cholecystostomy. For grade 3, it's mostly systemic, what do you call this? You have organ dysfunction here. So therefore, the initial treatment is supportive care. The patient's response to that, then he goes for early laparoscopic cholecystectomy. But if there is no response, then the treatment is percutaneous cholecystostomy. However, this guideline is pretty emphatic about the fact that when you are doing laparoscopic surgery for either grade 2 disease or for grade 3 disease, then it has to be by expert surgeon and it has to be in advanced center where supportive care is available. Next, timing of laparoscopic cholecystectomy, a very contentious issue. We know by now that early surgery is recommended, but now let us see how early is this early surgery. There are several studies, randomized trials. There are, review articles and meta-analysis, etc. But I'll just summarize it because Dr. Kapoor tells me that this session is meant for general surgeons. So we have to give a very clear message rather than confusing them with the pros and cons of various studies and all that. So the sum total of all the studies is laparoscopic cholecystectomy, when indicated, should be performed within first week of the onset of acute cholecystitis and preferably in specialized centers. Earlier it was thought that it is safe to do it within 72 hours. Now this time limit has been extended to 1 week. And even this WSES guideline says that up to 10 days you can perform early cholecystectomy. In acute cholecystitis, gallbladder can appear in many hues and shades. Like you can see here, you can't see any gallbladder here. It's all covered with this adhesions. You have a tense gallbladder, intense and inflamed gallbladder. Inflamed gallbladder showing patchy gangrene, and here almost a gangrenous gallbladder. So there has been several grading systems or scoring systems given to grade the difficulty of the severity of the disease, on the basis of which treatment guidelines have been given. I'm not going to details of that. So this is another scoring system, Parkland grading system of acute cholecystitis. Here again, there are 5 grades, out of which 3, 4, 5 are difficult, would mean difficult cholecystectomy. And this is a recently published grading given on operative findings. This is called Nassar scale. Here again, on the basis of operative findings, they have predicted which is going to be difficult and which is going to be easy. But then sum total of all this, and from our personal experience, I can tell you what is the best gallbladder to operate and what is the worst gallbladder to operate. Best is when the patient has presented with first attack of acute cholecystitis and you are operating in the first week. That is probably the easiest of all. And the worst gallbladder is the one where there is history of previous attacks of acute or recurrent acute or chronic cholecystitis. Or when it is a second week, patient presenting in the second week and you are forced to operate for some complications or a non-resolving cholecystitis, then that again is a difficult scenario. Or on ultrasound or preoperative imaging, you're finding a thick wall gallbladder or a contracted gallbladder and it's acute cholecystitis, then you should expect difficulty during surgery. These are some operative tips how to handle the cases of acute cholecystitis. These are the issues. And I mean, this is what the edematous and distended tense gallbladder, this causes a problem in holding, grasping and retracting. And the solution to that is aspirate this gallbladder, put a thick needle, aspirate all that. And sometimes the contents may be so thick that you're not able to aspirate. All that you have to do is give a nick here with a cautery, empty out the gallbladder, let the contents flow out, suck it out from outside, and let the gallbladder collapse. And then it becomes easily handleable. You can use a tooth grasper because you may not be able to hold it with an ordinary non-tooth grasper. So use a tooth grasper to hold it. So that gives you a good grip so that you can retract, and I mean, that also helps in dissection and finding planes and dissecting the gallbladder. Then you have this problem of impacted stone in the Hartmann's pouch, which can cause difficulty in grasping as well as dissection and identification of the anatomy in the hepatocystic triangle. So the solution here is try to disimpact this stone, push it up into the gallbladder body or fundus. If that is not possible, you may have to give a nick here, empty out all the stones, empty out this Hartmann's area. Then you should be able to hold it with a good grasper and retract it and dissect. Then you may have inflamed gallbladder, and this inflammatory tissue obscuring the anatomy. You're not able to find any landmarks and all that. And in the process, you might end up injuring the bile duct or the hepatic artery and all that. So here again, the trick is look for possible landmarks, available landmarks like Ruvia sulcus or an enlarged lymph node, and stay close to gallbladder and dissect. And this is a subserosal plane, a very good plane you have to find. I mean, this is basically when you divide the anterior peritoneum and the posterior peritoneum, and this is a plane between the gallbladder and the peritoneum. And the initial stage of inflammation, this plane is very easy to dissect. You can literally just push a gallbladder off its bed, once you divide this peritoneum. That is called subserosal plane. So you have to hit that plane and dissect gallbladder. And again, for dissection, it is advisable that you use a blunt instrument, and suction cannula is the best instrument for this purpose, because here it is a blunt instrument to dissect, as well as if there is any soiling and all that, and there's bleeding, you can always suck and clear the area, or you can irrigate the area also using a suction. So that's the best instrument we have found to dissect in cases of acute cholecystitis. Then again, because of the impacted stone, sometimes you might find the cystic duct quite wide, effaced, and there's not much space to, put a clip across. So the best thing here is to use this Hem-o-lok clip. It is very secure, and even if one clip is good enough, and there may not be adequate space to put 2 or 3 clips, so one clip you can put here and then you can divide it. And then this gallbladder bed could be undissectable. In the process, you might cause a lot of bleeding, removing the gallbladder from its bed. So the best thing here to do is leave behind the posterior wall, as has been done here. You can see here we have removed the the top part of the gallbladder, leaving behind this posterior wall. This is the necrotic mucosa. After you finish the surgery, you can always ablate this mucosa using spray cautery. And then necrotic gallbladder wall of the necrotic gallbladder, there could be a lot of spillage and contamination. So we always use a retrieval bag or this endo bag. I mean, it's a very fancy thing to use this endo bag, but all that we use is a polythene bag cut into small piece and then inserted, into which all this gallbladder, dissected gallbladder and other marked and stones are packed and then retrieved. Critical view of safety has been talked since morning. We have been talking about it. The incidents, like in how many we can achieve, how many we cannot achieve. See, overall, the percentage is about 90 to 95%. You should be able to achieve critical view of safety. And in case of acute cholecystitis, is in the report as well as our experience that in about 80 to 85%, you should be able to achieve critical view of safety, and you must try for it. Of course, here the view may not look as clean as you do when you're doing for an elective gallbladder, but all the same, all the principles of CVS has been met here. This is the cystic duct, cystic artery, and here the GB has been lifted from his bed. Similarly, here the GB has been lifted from his bed, may not be up to 1/3, but at least to some extent this has been lifted up. The cystic artery has been divided early in the course, and if you have to do that, you do it close to the gallbladder so that you are safe. And having done that, now we are getting this window. Now we are reasonably sure about this being the cystic duct, and then this can be, clipped and divided. And the advantage or the, the benefit of doing this thing, trying to achieve CVS, or the insistence to achieve CVS is, you can see here, this abnormal anatomy, how it is getting unraveled here. This is the right hepatic artery, and this is the short cystic artery. If I hadn't done this dissection, we would have perhaps injured this artery. Similarly, here also, you can see initially a thick artery going to the gallbladder, but as it turns out, this was a right hepatic artery giving us short cystic artery. So it's very important to try and achieve a critical view of safety, even if technically it may be a little demanding, little difficult in cases of acute cholecystitis. When you cannot achieve CVS, then these are the alternative techniques. Bailout techniques has already been presented and discussed here. So this is what this, fundus first cholecystectomy, you dissect out from the fundus, but very important to identify this junction of the gallbladder with this bile duct. You have to make a very critical assessment of this area. Then only you can appreciate like what this damn thing is. This is actually the bile duct, and this is where the junction. If you want to be absolutely safe, then you divide the gallbladder at a much safer distance away from this supposed neck. And in the process, you might end up doing a subtotal cholecystectomy, but all the same, that is fairly acceptable. This is here a subtotal cholecystectomy here. This is the so-called reconstituting type of surgery here. The part of the gallbladder cuff has been stitched together. And when everything else fails, then don't have to hesitate to convert to open cholecystectomy. Conversion to open cholecystectomy is an important issue. And the overall reported incidence of conversion is to the tune of 6 to 34 or 35%. And this particularly high, close to 45% in the subgroup of patients were operated either for non-resolution of cholecystitis or for recurrence of acute attack during waiting period. This is a personal experience of acute cholecystitis. This was done as a DNB thesis by one of our DNB candidates. As you can see here, we have this, 19% of patients, or we have 42 patients, 42 out of 116 patients who had to undergo or who were subjected to cholecystectomy in the second week onwards because of various reasons. As I said, because we are in tertiary care centers, we do get this complicated cases with perforation or non-resolution or continuation of sepsis, where we are forced to operate on this patient. So of the total 116 patients, you can see we had 15% of patients who had gall gangrene or perforation. What is important here is in 85% of patients, we could achieve critical view of safety. In the early cases, it is 86%. And even in the, I won't say delayed, we call them intermediate group. In this intermediate cases, even in 83%, we could achieve critical view of safety. And we had to resort to subtotal cholecystectomy in about 11% of patients. And our conversion rate, overall conversion rate was 3% without any major morbidity or any mortality in the series. I would just say that this low conversion rate in our experience is attributable to the tertiary care experience that we handle these cases day in and day out, and our willingness to adopt to alternative techniques like subtotal cholecystectomy. That's the reason we could keep our conversion rates very low. A word about this percutaneous CT-guided cholecystostomy. This is a very useful salvage procedure in critically ill patients. Just an example, this particular patient, he was a patient of COPD with ischemic heart disease who had acute cholecystitis. Not only acute cholecystitis, his gallbladder perforated, he had a perihepatic abscess also. And absolutely, anesthesia-wise, absolutely unfit for surgery. So he had two catheters inserted under CT guidance, one into the gallbladder and the other one was to the perihepatic abscess or the perihepatic collection. As you can see here, 2 weeks later, the patient recovered without any major problem, and a cholecystocholangiogram, or through this percutaneous catheter cholangiogram, you can see very encouraging picture. The cystic duct is patent, and this entire system can be opacified. So basically this patient had acalculous cholecystitis. So we thought perhaps this should be the end of his problem. This catheter can be pulled out 6 weeks later and leave him as such without, subjecting this patient to cholecystectomy at any point in time. So just to summarize, the Tokyo guidelines provide a reasonable roadmap for management of acute cholecystitis, and imaging is a must for confirmation of diagnosis. Early laparoscopic cholecystectomy within 1 week of onset of attack is recommended in the majority, and patients with serious comorbidities and with multi-organ dysfunction not recoverable by ICU care should undergo CT-guided percutaneous cholecystostomy. And laparoscopic cholecystectomy, when indicated, must be performed in specialized centers. And CVS is achievable in approximately 80% of patients. One should always try to achieve CVS during dissection. And alternative technique should be resorted to when CVS is not achievable. And conversion to open cholecystectomy should not be deferred in difficult situations.
Thanks,
you.
Ibrar, for such a wonderful lecture. There you see this latest book. We will be hoping another one soon. Any comments from the floor? Any questions you have? Yes, sir.
That's what I said. He may not require any cholecystectomy later because it's acalculous cholecystitis. It depends. If it's a very poor risk for surgery, then obviously you would wait. You have to basically weigh the pros and cons. The risk and benefit ratio.
Can I jut in for a minute?
Yeah,
That's the government sector approach and this is a private sector approach. You'll not leave until the gallbladder is removed. It's possible, and that's how the whole thing advanced to second to third week. Yeah, any rejoinder, Puneet, to that?
Why so? UHG guided PCC placement can be done very easily, sir.
The radiologists are more comfortable in putting because they have to go transhepatic through the transhepatic route. So as long as he can wheel the patient to ultrasound suite, he can always take him to a CT room as well.
Because these patients are usually seriously.
If it's so seriously you have to do it bedside, then obviously as a last resort you can do ultrasound guided as long as the radiologist is confident of doing it.
Yes.
Coming to that percutaneous drainage, very often we are referred patients with acute cholecystitis who are on clopidogrel, ecosprin, etc. How do you deal with them? You have any protocol?
I'll tell you, this particular patient, in fact, had his stents placed and all that. So cardiologists were very reluctant to stop those antiplatelets for this drainage.
Right.
So we took a calculated risk. I said, anyway, the patient it's going to be transhepatic puncture. So whatever bleeding probably will get tamponaded with this catheter. So we took a calculated risk and we went ahead and did this, despite.
Okay. I remember years ago, Dr. Shastri is listening. He always used to say the second week is a risky week, do not operate. But that Shastri still believes in that. But, people have gone forward. You have done good number in second week.
No, I said we are forced to operate on these patients because the tertiary care centers, all these complicated cases come to us where as a last resort we operate because either is a non-resolution of cholecystitis or maybe the gallbladder already perforated and a large abscess and all that. So that is basically of tertiary care experience I'm sharing, where you are forced to operate on these patients.
Yeah, Dr. Vishal Gupta, what is your question?
Sir, this is just a comment regarding the timing in acute cholecystitis. So if you see the latest, this multidisciplinary consensus conference, that very clearly says that in cases of mild acute cholecystitis, the best and safest timing is within 72 hours because we have evidence for this timing in mild acute cholecystitis only. But for moderate and severe acute cholecystitis, still we don't have sufficient evidence in support of what is the best timing. And second point, even in moderate and severe acute cholecystitis, it may be feasible to do laparoscopic cholecystectomy. But if you see the complication rate, especially the bile duct injury rate, it may go as high as 6 times more than what you can see in uncomplicated elective cases or mild cases. So even if you choose to go for the laparoscopic cholecystectomy after 72 hours, maybe after 7 days or after 10 days, you have to choose these patients very carefully, and there should be very clear message to the residents and other surgeons that these patients should be handled only by the experts who are experienced laparoscopic surgeons. So I
Yeah.
think the
Yeah, please.
yes, sir. So I think a majority of the audience in
On that.
audience either are residents or young surgeons. So with regards to the timing, clear message should be given to them that only 72 hours is the safest period, but only in cases of mild acute cholecystitis.
No, Vishal, I don't agree with you. I think it's not 72 hours. Even this Tokyo guideline says as it can go up to 7 days. And there are other, guidelines and recommendations, and plus that, meta-analysis and all that very clearly says that up to 7 days is the safe period. 72 hours may be the safest period, but up to 7 days is reasonably safe. And the several trials comparing the 7 days with 6 weeks plus, and they have found this is the timing. I think first week should be the acceptable timing. That's fairly clear. I don't think there is any debate on that.
Well, Ibra, my next question will be,
And as regards this getting the surgery done and by expert surgeon, sorry.
yeah, yes.
Where we have all sort of gadgetry available with us, the expertise available with us. I think 7 days, the papers appear from very high volume and very highly specialized centers. But anything beyond 72 hours, you see, when you give a message, it is very difficult to explain to the or convince all the surgeons. Once they go back to their place of practice, they think what I have already been told in that conference that you can do. And once they start, it is very difficult for them to judge when to retreat. Though retreat is a better part of the valor, but then it needs practice and experience. So I think we should be conservative when we are advising. In exam, 7 days, yes, you quote the paper, that's okay. But I think for practical purposes, we should be very conservative when we are advising the general audience.
Dr. Shastri, will you echo that statement?
Yeah, I totally agree. What you were referring to, the secondary, I still hold true as far as information is concerned. Second week is the deadly period when you do not want to disturb the natural inflammatory process and the healing process and undo what the nature is trying to do. As far as whether it is 72 hours or 1 week, exactly, I totally support him. In an advanced center where your skills are good, you are quite used to operate in an inflammatory setting, I think it is okay. But when you are advising a novice, I would confine myself to 72 hours.
No, Dr. Shastri, I mean, individual choices apart. As regards this timing of surgery, I think it is reasonably accepted that it's up to 1 week is safest. No one is debating about the second week intervention, but that early intervention, the time can stretch up to 7 days. I think that is reasonably clear. And besides, this is also, I'm equally emphatic that when you are doing it for mild cases, fine, anybody can do it. But for the other moderate or severe cases, it has to be by expert surgeon or in advanced center. So it is fairly clear. I mean, it's not a message for common surgeons or the average general surgeons that they can go and operate on cases of acute cholecystitis. And timing is not the only criteria. There are several other criteria which would decide, who should operate on these patients.
All the other criteria are accepted. When you're talking of only timing, see, people will take only that hint, that they will just remember the 7 days, irrespective of whether it is a severe inflammation or a mild inflammation. I agree, there are a lot of grades there, and you can get away with 1 week surgery at 1 week. But in a severe inflammation, 1 week for a novice is danger. See, that point, I think, has to be driven home to the residents.
I think the point well taken. So Pradeep has got a comment. He says, the second week onwards, when you go in for lap cholecystectomy, the chances of your going into subtotal cholecystectomy is very high. So we better go for conservative and go for interval
No, no,
cholecystectomy.
we are
You
not
agree?
operating by choice. Second week onwards, we are not operating by choice. This is where we are operating by compulsion. Like we are forced to operate on these patients because either the cholecystitis is not resolving, the patient has gone into sepsis, or he has perforated.
Yeah.
So as I said, that is our tertiary
Now,
care experience.
there
We
was
don't do
al-
it by choice.
There was also a comment in one of the meetings saying that a large number of these patients who undergo subtotal cholecystectomy or surgery second week, third week, a large number of them will come back with some issue or the other, they get readmitted. What is your experience in that? Are there retained stone or a stone in the bile
as
duct
you can
or a
see here-
collection and so on?
Yes, as you can see here, we do have subtotal cholecystectomy in this group, but the this thing figures are almost same. 11% in this early group, whereas 12% in the intermediate group, and overall it is 11%. So we don't really find much difference between the two groups. I mean, as I said again, like this is our tertiary care experience. This could be different.
So in
the hands
effect,
of
from
common surgeons.
Ibra's lecture, I understand that, with improvement in diagnosis, improvement surgical technique, equipment, I think the period has got extended little more and with good expertise, still it's possible to do. But having said that, the youngsters should be very careful when it is second week. I think that is the cutoff point, as Dr. Shastri said. I mean, that is a
No,
take home
first
point.
of all, I'll say acute cholecystitis is not a this thing for average surgeon or regular surgeon or a beginner surgeon.
Right.
It's always the job of an expert surgeon, surgery for acute cholecystitis,
I think-
whether it is early, mild and all that.
That's a good take home point. And with
Yeah.
that, I think we had a good discussion on acute cholecystitis. I thank Professor Kapoor for this opportunity and I hand over to the organizers to get to the next.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, Radhakrishnan sir, for chairing the session, and thank you, Ibrahullah sir, for such a nice interactive session on a bit controversial topic, acute cholecystitis, which every general surgeon as well as a experienced GI surgeon is encountering in his day-to-day practice. So the take-home message from the Ibrahullah sir has already given to the beginners as well as to the experienced surgeons.